And welcome into the Monday edition of Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley alongside Joe Rexrode. Nick Keyser here with you on this Monday morning. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend here in the Nashville area. We got a lot to get to on the program today. Joe Rexrode is live from Indianapolis, Indiana, in advance of the NFL Combine taking place this week. One of the great events of the sporting calendar year, as we all know. Joe Rexrode, good morning. How are you?
Well, great. I forgot my microphone, which makes me sound professional when I do the show on the road. And also, I can't really expect a major hotel chain like Marriott to have hot water for its guests in the morning. Way too early for that. Wouldn't expect that. That's asking way too much for whatever the freaking rate is per night here. So having a great Monday morning. How are you guys doing?
Well, and you're in one of your favorite cities, in Indianapolis, Indiana, too. So it's good at least that you have that. Charles Robinson will be there this week. So a meeting of the minds, Joe Rexrode included, in Indianapolis this week. I'm doing very well. Had a very nice, resting, relaxing weekend. Nick Keyser, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm getting over my little stuffy episode that I had for the last little bit, and I'm not too happy about my first weekend winners. I'm keeping more track of it this time around than I did last time. So
I did pretty well.
Yeah.
Just going to throw that out there.
You
pretty
did,
well.
yeah.
So
how did I do? I don't even remember.
I'll have to go look. I know that you got the Baylor-Houston game wrong, but you got Kentucky-Alabama right. You did. They nailed that one.
That's right.
And I looked up at Kentucky was up by like 50 points. I was like, wow, I think Joe's going to get it.
I could have gotten it. Baylor-Houston was a great game.
Yeah.
Could have got it.
Absolutely.
Not quite.
A lot to get to, like I talked about earlier on the program. Preds win again. We're going to get to that here in just a second. 5 in a row for them on the road trip. So they sweep the road trip. They'll come back home, and now they got 5 in a row coming up at home as well. So we'll see if they can build on that. Tennessee with some good news over the weekend on Friday with their injunction against the NCAA. We'll talk about that at 6:30 today on the program. And like I said, Joe Rexrode live from the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Joe, the Preds finish it off last night with a 4-2 win against the Anaheim Ducks. So they win Saturday against San Jose in a game where I wouldn't say that they played great in that game, but they did enough to win. And then last night against Anaheim on the second half of the back-to-back, they close out the road trip and they win. So now they've won 5 games in a row ever since the U2 thing, and you get hammered by Dallas at home. You go on the road and you respond as well as you can respond and win 5 consecutive games. They're 4 points up on St. Louis now. Now, granted, they've also played 2 more games than St. Louis has. They're only 2 points back from L.A. now in the wild card race, and you win 5 in a row. That's going to really improve the playoff chances as you move forward here. We'll see if they can keep it going as they get back home. But, Joe, your initial reaction to the Predators finishing this thing off and coming back home with a 5-game winning streak?
I'd still take U2 over the 5-game winning streak, but that's just me. No, really impressive. Really impressive stuff, no doubt. I actually saw Nick's tweet, which I think was a good – I had it on my phone. I guess I don't anymore. But
it was
the
so
fact
good.
that but it was good because it was basically everybody scored. And I think that is the thing about this streak is that they weren't just carried by the top line. The power play didn't do very well, but this is secondary scoring. They found some, and some of these young guys I feel like have gotten a little jump here. When is it because? First of all, I can't imagine any of the young guys actually give a crap about U2. If they do, I'm a big fan of that young guy. Good for you. But whatever it is, I think regardless of the consequence of the Dallas game, the consequence is also embarrassment, right?
Yes.
It has to be for everybody involved, regardless of what somebody says to you afterward or takes away or whatever. So it's been a fantastic response, no doubt about it. And you just never know with this team. It's absolutely a roller coaster. And I guess the problem now is they're coming home where they're now way worse than they are on the road.
Yeah, for sure. The road record is fantastic. And can you come back home and keep things going here against an Ottawa team tomorrow that's not been very good, although they're playing much better now, which is for some reason an Ottawa Senators thing. Like when they get basically knocked out of a playoff spot where they have no hope of coming back, they start to play well. and they've done that for the last 3 years, which like drives their fan base nuts. That's what they're doing again here. A huge game against Minnesota on Thursday. You got Colorado at home Saturday, so some big games coming up. But I'm with you. Like the way that they won some of these games, I think is really encouraging because it wasn't, the Ryan O'Reilly and Philip Forsberg show. Although, Forsberg scored against San Jose. He scored again last night and a goal that really he's the one on the roster that can score the one that he did last night. But, Michael McCarron scoring goals. Kiefer Sherwood on Saturday night against San Jose scoring 2. I think Evangelista's been really good on this trip, even when he hasn't been putting the puck in the net. Tommy Novak continues to play pretty well. So a lot of these guys that you're going to have produce if you're going to have a chance to make the playoffs, and certainly if you've got a chance to do anything once you get to the playoffs, are producing right now. Now, the big question is this sustainable? Like, can you get sustainable offense from these guys? And look, I do think, the power play has to get better. And the encouraging part is, like, Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly, I think will get better, and they will play better, and they will score goals more often than they did on this trip. So if you can get that in tandem with the secondary scoring that you got on this road trip, well, then you're in a pretty good spot at that point. It is interesting, though. We get after the Dallas game, and it's a 9-2 loss, and it's like, okay, well, I think the trading deadline decision is made, and then they roll off 5 in a row. Cody on the text line says, Preds always do this. When I'm convinced I want them to sell, they go on a winning streak, and now I have no idea what I want. This is from Cody on the text line. I think a lot of Predators fans probably feeling that way today.
Yeah, but like, as far as what you should want when they play, is you want them to win, right? I mean, you're a Preds fan.
Sure.
I mean, like they're in a race here. I do agree with John from Clarksville. He says, Lankland looked great 2 games. Trotz should not let this affect him at the deadline. Clean out the closet, gain all the assets you can. But I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I personally do not think that any winning from here till the deadline should be a factor in the Saros discussions. I really don't. And I don't know if anybody does, but I just like, if you get a sweet deal to set yourself up for the future, then you do it. And then, I mean, you can't. That doesn't necessarily. I know that the guys in the room, some would be unhappy. Although I think you also, if you're them and you pay attention, you got to understand the situation and be realistic. One of these guys is going to be the future of this team in net. So, but I don't know. I guess, Robby, with this kind of winning, do we go back to thinking about Trotz actually looking for something to pick up to actually help this team?
Maybe. I think probably what would be more likely, at least in my opinion, in this, and I'm totally with you on Saros. Like, to me, his is kind of a separate discussion than everybody else. But I think what would be more likely if I'm Barry Trotz is, are there players that are currently on the roster that you were looking to ship out of here that maybe you're less willing to do now that you're winning and you're in a playoff spot? So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're adding, but maybe you're not doing as much of a subtract as you otherwise would have, if that makes any sense. I think with the winning that's going on right now, standing pat probably becomes a little bit more likely than it was before. I still, unless there's just a ridiculous trade out there where you can go get, a fringe top 6 forward for like a 4th round pick, then I don't know if I'd be if the adding changes much if I'm Barry Trotz. And besides, like, I don't know that there's anybody out there that's realistic right now that you can go grab that's going to be a player that you really don't already have. Like I don't know if there's a 30 goal scorer just sitting out there waiting for you to go get.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you've been trying to build chemistry with these guys together. And so unless you have someone who really shakes it up and upgrade you, then you've got plenty of, of kind of interchangeable pieces. I mean, and you got some options in Milwaukee too. They lost now, so I guess it's clean house time for them. Right?
They did. The 19-game winning streak has come to an end. What will we do? The Milwaukee Admirals. I don't know what to do anymore. They lost the game. Was that the first game they've lost this calendar year? I believe it is.
Correct. Yes, they've not lost since December 17th, I think. Yeah.
That's a long time.
Wow.
Pretty good run.
That is a heck of a run. My goodness. I don't know. I mean, I wonder about Carl Taylor's effectiveness now. I thought he was doing pretty well, but I don't know, man.
Has he lost the run?
So, yeah, maybe. All right, so do I need to yell? Like, do I sound okay?
No, you sound good.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Good to know.
You sound silky smooth. That Marriott Wi-Fi coming in very strong.
That's good. I brought Kaharski's tripod here for him too. So didn't remember my microphone, but I remember Kaharski's tripod. Also, by the way, guys, 5-1 with a lock. Just
Ooh,
want you to know.
look at you. So the Pigskin Pick'em champions, starting off weekend winners, very, very strong. So the only loss you had was the Houston game, huh? That's a close one too.
Yeah, and I'm the only one who had the Preds winning both games.
You
You
did.
guys have no faith.
That is true.
Yeah, Joe's just rolled in our show today on a Cadillac, just like
He is.
Just like Chris Chelios did for his retirement ceremony. He rode in there with his mom in the car.
He did. Completely unrelated,
How about that?
but the Patrick Kane stuff was pretty awesome yesterday.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Stirring tribute and then wins it in overtime. How about that?
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. 615-737-1025, our phone number. We're off and running today here on Robby and Rexrode. We're going to get back into the Preds hot and heavy in the 7 o'clock hour and discuss the 5-game winning streak and where things go from here with them coming back home and the trade deadline only a couple of weeks away at this point. We'll take your thoughts on that all show long. 615-737-1025. Joe is live from the NFL Combine. We'll get into things to look for the Titans' perspective at the NFL Combine coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. We are live from our 102.5 The Game studio, brought to you by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you. Joe, live from Indianapolis, the NFL Combine this week, the Underwear Olympics, as some call it. And now, Joe, we know that apparently Caleb Williams will not be throwing or working out, and Jaden Daniels not throwing either. So at least two of the top three quarterbacks, I haven't heard anything about Drake May yet, two of the three top quarterbacks projected to go in the draft, not participating in the NFL Combine. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, I wonder if we're going to see just more and more of that, and even, it's almost like the Senior Bowl. Senior Bowl is a lot of good prospects, but usually the top prospects don't go to the Senior Bowl. They don't go to any of those things, So are we going to get to the point where if you are, confident that you're, because I think Stroud didn't throw here last year. Am I right about that?
I believe that's correct.
I think that's right. I remember I was actually at his pro day, and remember I should have known that day. Like, man, he's pretty good. He throws it pretty well. He might be good. But I do wonder if we see just more of that. The prospects who are, are pretty secure that they're going at the top of the draft, not bothering to do something in this environment that might actually trip them up. As opposed to you go to, because I mean, I think everybody will at least throw at their pro day.
I would assume so.
I can't remember, and maybe if I'm wrong, if I'm misremembering, someone let me know. But I can't remember like a top quarterback prospect not doing that. But that may be it's just like just do your pro day around your friends, your teammates, all the people throw to your receivers and stuff like that, and keep it to that. It's too bad, but I mean, look, I'm not shedding a tear for the combine because the combine sucks. So I'm sorry, but I get that some people are probably upset by it.
Yeah, I mean, first off, like if you're a guy like Caleb Williams or really even Jaden Daniels, like what's the value gained by throwing at the combine? Probably not much. Like, congratulations, Caleb. You were projected first overall heading into the combine, and now you're projected first overall still. Way to go. I mean, that's basically what the thought process is, I would guess, there from them. It is interesting, though, like Anthony Richardson, I think, was a great example of this last year. And to a different extent, I do wonder about, guys later in the draft. Like, honestly, this week I'm thinking about, like, Joe Milton, right? Like, Joe Milton at the combine would figure to be really impressive with the athleticism that he has, certainly the arm strength on full display when there's nobody running after you and you can sit out there and just sling the ball 90 yards down the field. Like, this is a week where I think Joe Milton and guys like that have a pretty good opportunity to impress at the NFL Combine.
Well, I mean, we'll see with Milton. He'll impress with the strength of his arm, but at the Senior Bowl, I don't think he really helped himself because he missed. He just missed on too many throws.
Yep.
And even that'd be very interesting on the athleticism part with him. Big and strong and a good athlete, but I don't know. I think this is a huge week for him. To test really well and to throw really well. I mean, he's a guy who needs this. He needs this to help him. The Senior Bowl really didn't, but I can't imagine like his agent being like, yeah. I mean, like if he were to not throw, then it's just like, okay, so you just don't believe in yourself, right? I mean, so he's got to, he's got to really bring it. It's a big week for him and guys like that, and even for a lot of the guys between like Milton and the top of because I think I saw, and I don't remember, it might have been Brugler, Jeremiah, but I think someone had him like 10th recently I saw, which seems about right among QB prospects. I mean, the thing about Caleb Williams not throwing, honestly, I mean, what that basically means is now people can bitch on social media about him, because that's what they like to do. And also it hurts the NFL because they so badly want this to be like compelling TV, even though it's not at all anyway. So I'm actually in favor of it.
I can't remember if it was at the combine. I think it was at his pro day. But the Zach Wilson part, like did you see the throws that Zach Wilson made? It's like
Yeah.
from that moment on, looking back on that and what happened at the combine, or again, I think his may have been his pro day. But it's just like, can we please put a stop to this nonsense? And I get the NFL is king, and NFL has done a great job of controlling the sports cycle here, and they only get better at it with each passing year. But this combine stuff is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't give Charles enough crap. I know I've given him some crap on our show for like the year he was here for the combine. I was here because I had like a basketball game, like in Bloomington or something, and then the LSU quarterback, my God, help me out.
Jamarcus Russell.
Thank you. Jamarcus Russell is just, throwing 100 yards from his knees or whatever the heck he did, which means it has nothing to do with the NFL, or playing quarterback well. And they're like, oh, Charles just like, oh my God, I got to find that column he wrote off that. Like, this guy is holy cow. Who gives a crap? It really means nothing. Like, how many testing things at this combine have actually turned into, there's definitely been like really good players who, okay, do you run well enough? And I've seen that before. It's like if you just run like a great corner, a great receiver, just run a 4.5, then that tells me what I need to know or whatever, right? So like from that perspective, sometimes the 40 can be important. Obviously, Metcalf is the one guy I can think of where it's like he blew up here, and it was like that's just too dominant an athlete to ignore. Or even Richardson last year, So it's not completely meaningless, but other than like a few things. It's just athletic testing, man. I don't give a crap.
Well, the real value.
Are you good at football or are you not good at football?
Exactly.
That's what I want to know.
And the real value, I think, of the combine is the interview process, right? Like it's getting it's getting in front of these players, getting to know them a little bit more. I guess, we're going to hear some stories this week about in the aftermath of all this, Joe, like, oh, so-and-so came in for an interview and he took the chips that were sitting in the middle of the table. We didn't like that, so now he's off the draft board. Well, we'll hear some stupid stuff like that. But, like, if you're Carthon and Brian Callahan, like, getting yourself in front of some of these prospects that you're interested in, getting to know them, what makes them tick, how do you feel about kind of the character part of this stuff, the work ethic, all those things. And those are things that, as NFL-consuming fans – we're not going to know that much about because we're not obviously not in the room for that stuff. But that's what the real value is in the combine for these teams, I think.
I agree. And what we do have then is we start to get, you get this or that report coming out of that stuff, right? And that's where it gets into the whole. And I thought last year was probably as prime an example as I can think of in terms of misinformation.
Yeah.
The people weaponizing the really not accurate S2 number against CJ Stroud, possibly the Texans themselves. Yeah. I know I've heard Jared has speculated it was the Titans, but probably someone who was interested in CJ Stroud would be my guess.
Yep.
And just things like that, and all the Levis stuff. All the Levis stuff, like you said, Charles is talking about the chips, but just a wide range of interesting things, and it's like, is it people who are agents of other quarterbacks trying to mess with the quarterbacks, not who their clients are? And I know some people believe that.
Yep.
Is it all? But that's where I guess it's kind of fun, but that's also like, you have to take it all with a grain of salt, right?
No question. And then there's the, from a Titans fan part of this, really the interesting thing is Carthon and Callahan speak tomorrow, and getting Carthon to talk about free agency and what's on the clock for the Titans coming up, and maybe some plans that they have. I'm interested to see what Carthon has to say on that front. Like from a coaching perspective, Callahan's already spoken twice at this point, and now we're getting into the part where it's about free agency and it's about the draft. So I don't know that Callahan's going to say a ton this week up there in Indianapolis, but it is going to be interesting to see, Rand Carthon, what he has to say, and I guess how willing he is to go into detail about some of the plans the Titans have this offseason.
Yeah, and they both talk. I think they talk tomorrow at 9:15, 9:45.
Yeah.
tomorrow. So, and also tomorrow I'm going to get the time right, but I will go to Dan Campbell and ask him if he's going to get rid of all specialists on his team and really go all in.
Dan, your thoughts on field goal kicking? Is that something you're aware of? Do you know what that is? Your thoughts? Don't hurt my kneecaps, please. Leave my kneecaps alone.
Exactly. Yeah. I will stand. Yeah. Like I'm going to stand back a little bit for sure.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. Coming up next, a victory for Tennessee and Virginia over the weekend in their case against the NCAA. We'll get into that, what it means for the Vols, and what it means really for college sports moving forward. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Nashville's best deal of the week this week is 312 Pizza Company. 312 Pizza Company serves the best pizza in town, as well as Chicago-style eats like Chicago dogs, Italian beef sandwiches, and more. Get half off a $30 gift card to 312 Pizza Company at thegamenashville.com/deals while supplies last. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Joe, Friday, a good day for Tennessee in their case against the NCAA. A federal judge barring the NCAA from enforcing its rules prohibiting NIL for recruits, granting a preliminary injunction, which was demanded, of course, by the states of Tennessee as well as Virginia as well. So that's a big win for Tennessee, again, in their case against the NCAA. Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti put this out there in a statement, quote, "The court's grant of a preliminary injunction against the NCAA's illegal NIL recruitment ban ensures the rights of student athletes will be protected for the duration of this case, but the bigger fight continues. We'll litigate this case to the fullest extent necessary to ensure the NCAA's monopoly cannot continue to harm Tennessee student athletes. The NCAA is not above the law, and the law is on our side." That was what Tennessee Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti said in his statement over the weekend. So, Joe, your thoughts on the latest development in this case, what it means for Tennessee, and probably more importantly, what it means for the NCAA, who continues every time they go into a court case for things not to go very well for them lately.
Yeah, I'm going to say this with force because Raymond and Franklin says it sounds like I'm talking like I'm in a toilet. So first of all, there's two things here, right? So this is the injunction. So this does not mean like the case isn't over,
Correct.
right? But so you had a TRO, temporary restraining order, that went against Tennessee, and then you have the injunction Tennessee gets. In both cases, though, the judge basically said, like, basically said the NCAA is going to lose here.
Correct.
So first of all, right now, what this means is, and it's not just in Tennessee and Virginia, it's everywhere. There are no rules for NIL, no rules. So whatever Tennessee was doing, whatever Vanderbilt was doing, whatever, you pick it up, baby. You better pick it up because like there's no rules right now. So, and you know, the real what this really means, I think the best thing this means is really it's what like Josh Heupel argued in his statement, you know, and there's so much rhetoric around all this, but there are some really good points, you know, that are part of this. And the biggest one to me, when it comes down to the long term, whenever this gets stabilized, which is probably some sort of labor management situation, I mean, these kids should be allowed to find out the value and find out what the market is. Like that's the thing is we've seen this. I think we saw it with Florida football as one big example that went public is like a lot of them are getting lied to, you know, or have been. And so let's get if it's on the table, let's really let it be on the table. And that's really all this is. I mean, it's just again the NCAA trying to trying to sort of let it happen, but still trying to then go back and retroactively hit schools for breaking rules that weren't at the time rules. I mean, it's just I've been waiting for what else do they have other than Nico got on the plane, you know? Well, what else is there? If they're going to make this big of a stink about it, and again, the lack of institutional control is going to be uttered at some point. What else are we talking about? And from everything I can figure out here, there really isn't anything. There are other sports involved, but I mean, it doesn't. I'm assuming this means that the investigation is going to just die. It may die a quiet death. I don't think the NCAA, I mean, there's just no notice of allegations right now. So I'm assuming there never will be one. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but I mean, I don't even know if that's all you have is basically like trying to go back in time with these rules that now have been ruled illegal. Today, they are illegal. I don't see how you can proceed with this if you're the NCAA.
Well, here's the way Adam Sparks put it, and I think it's a good way to put it. This from the Knoxville News-Sentinel. Quote, "The NCAA's investigation into the University of Tennessee isn't dead after a federal judge suspended enforcement of NIL rules, but it may be on life support." And that's kind of what it feels like. The investigation by the NCAA is on life support. And I'm with you. Like, I thought when all this first came out that maybe there was like a smoking gun there that's the NCAA had that was just going to come out at some point. And the fact that it hasn't to this point is leading me to believe that there's really not one, which goes back to what we started talking about at the beginning of all this, Joe. Like, you better have more if you're the NCAA than like Nico hopping on a plane and trying to retroactively enforce that. Because if you don't, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense for you to get into this battle if you're them. And one thing's been made pretty clear. Like, the way that the Supreme Court case went down, where you lost 9-0 in a country and in a world right now, but specifically our country that can't agree on anything, the Supreme Court had a 9-0 decision. That should tell you right there kind of exactly the battle you're fighting in courts right now. And now we have this injunction again, which, as you said, basically just reopens the door back up to anything goes and NIL. Like, it's tough to see the way out of this right now for the NCAA. And when this first came out on Friday that the injunction was filed, I mean, people around the country, from The Athletic to ESPN, people who covered college football, was like, yep, we're basically watching the death of the NCAA happen right in front of our very eyes.
Right. So now, whenever people bring that up, I was like, okay, but you are going to have some governing body, right? But maybe this is like, you know, the conversation about, you know, the powerful football schools splitting off or whatever that may be, you know. But certainly NCAA enforcement is just it's not going to win this stuff. It's not going to win this stuff. And so I mean, to me, it's like, are you going to plow millions more into lawyers to keep fighting this one? Because they got a whole bunch of other lawsuits out there. I mean, they lost the transfer thing in West Virginia, but there's the National Labor Relations Board stuff that's, I think, this week is happening. They've got all kinds of lawsuits out there. And like you said, Robbie, the Supreme Court has now basically told everybody they're going to lose all of them,
right,
or for the most part. I don't know the specifics with every single lawsuit, but if it's a reasonable lawsuit, then it's probably going to be an L for the NCAA. So, you know, like this idea, some of the NCAA statements. I mean, I'm gonna read a statement from the NCAA. Okay. It says, quote, turning upside down rules overwhelmingly supported by member schools will aggravate an already chaotic collegiate environment, further diminishing protections for student athletes from exploitation. And again, to me, like, no, actually, I believe that when you try to sort of be half pregnant here and, like, you know, yes, NIL, but it's not pay for play. You can't talk about what the money is. That's just stupid. From the very start of this, obviously, the very, very best athletes, it was going to be pay for play, and it has been pay for play. Okay, it has been pay for play. It's just a lot more pay with a lot more guys now.
Yep.
So it's just a charade that needs to end. And to me, the NCAA needs to stop spending so much money to lose over and over again.
So Adam Sparks has an interesting piece at the Knoxville News Sentinel, basically just kind of highlighting options of where the NCAA could go from here in the aftermath of all this on Friday. And I'll just read kind of the overall themes here. Number one, the NCAA could give up and go home, and Sparks goes into detail about that. Number two, the NCAA could downgrade its investigation. So, you know, they could, I guess, reevaluate their position and focus in on minor violations of investigations into other sports. NCAA could hold out for the trial, or finally the NCAA could try to reinterpret violations. And Adam Sparks describes that as, quote, this would be bold and likely unsuccessful. And he uses the phrase likely unsuccessful in pretty much every one of these options. So it's a long way of saying the NCAA really doesn't have a whole lot of great options left on the table when it comes to this case.
Yeah, I think this is just going to quietly go away, you know? And I don't think there's going to be a notice of allegations. Yeah, the idea of, I guess you could try to pop them for some minor stuff. I mean, it's just a big waste of time. As is, like, what's going on with this idea? Like, you can't put like a school's decoration in the recruit's hotel room. Like, what are we doing here?
I don't know.
What in the hell are we doing? Thing is, man, like, I have liked. I've thought that like Charlie Baker has come up a lot better to me than Mark Emmert. Mark Emmert was absolutely ostrich with head in the sand, Mr. Magoo for years. Just he was terrible, a terrible NCAA president. And I have definitely been a lot more impressed with Charlie Baker, and he has said some common sense things about trying to figure this out. And I understand they're trying to be within the constraints of the model. And that statement I read, listen, it is true. These schools do, and the thing is, they do make the rules. So there's a lot of like contradiction here going on, right? I mean, there's also different needs for like the very small group of high level football schools and everybody else, and all the issues that they have with the NCAA. But like, how could you possibly sit in that building and think that this is a good idea? How about you're already taking L's left and right? How about let's make ourselves look like complete morons? Let's do that,
Yeah,
okay? We haven't done that enough lately.
it's really a
Like,
bold strategy.
who comes up with this stuff now? Are we like we used to? I mean, years ago it was like, oh, you can only have so much cream cheese on your bagel, and some of these stupid rules. And that was back like before all this stuff that needed to happen happened. And we're gonna try to do something like that now. It's mind boggling.
Well, I'll say this, as far as if you're a Tennessee fan out there that's been really worried about this and like, oh my gosh, Tennessee finally gets to the point where Bama, they've lost Nick Saban and we got our quarterback in there and he's going to be suspended and ineligible to play, I'd be feeling pretty good about where they're at with the Nico stuff this morning.
Nico will never play again.
Yeah, yes. I think they're going to be okay.
I mean, to me, I say when Nico comes out for the opener next year, he should just go ahead and like make it rain as he's
look at the
money, man. Yeah.
Look at all this. We'll have more on Tennessee's case against the NCAA coming up next. Take your reaction to the victory for Tennessee over the weekend. 615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Monday morning. Tomorrow, your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Tomorrow morning at 8:45, Pick to Click brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes and Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. David in Fairview says, "This is my problem with the pay-for-play and all the sports betting. There's a reason why this was shunned on a decade ago, as money and sports don't mix. It creates too many open doors for cheating and, to me, squanders the true competition of the sports." This is from David in Fairview on the text line. Joe, your thoughts on David's thoughts?
David, I hate to break this to you, buddy, but we've had cheating and paying in sports. Yeah, my favorite thing when we talk about like college sports and amateurism and all that, the Big Ten Conference was created because the college football teams playing each other were cheating so much that we got to have somebody trying to overlook this stuff. They just keep bringing in these big, like 30-year-old dudes and saying they go to school at Iowa and they're crushing us on the football field. I mean, seriously, go read the history. It's been going on.
That guy's forever. 37 years old. How do you end up out there?
What's his major? I mean, yeah, this is not new.
And oh my God, it's Andre the Giant. How do you end up playing for Nebraska?
The heck of a long snapper, though, man. So, and then the gambling. Let's what was it? 105 years ago, the Black Sox scandal.
Yeah.
1919. I mean, it's been part of it. It's been intertwined. Think of the Boston College, sports betting scandal. I will say, though, David, on the gambling side of it, I do agree. It's wild to see how it was kept away and shunned for so long, and now all of a sudden it's a full embrace, right? And my only hope with that is, and we've discussed this, but that when it becomes it's everywhere, that maybe sunlight on everything actually is better in terms of the integrity of the games themselves, right? I mean that's the I mean the concern is everybody gambling now, right? But my hope is that actually that there's actually more accountability and less opportunity for things like the Boston College point shaving scandal or Tim Donaghy in the NBA, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean that's just I don't know that that's true, but I think that that's the hope. That is wild. But as far as college sports and amateurism and pay for play and all this stuff, just go back through all the years when it's amazing how these top recruits are waiting until the very end. You'd think that maybe they'd want to get their decision over, but they're going all the way down, and they got like Alabama and Auburn and Tennessee and LSU. Why are they waiting till the very end? What is happening behind the scenes for them to finally make a decision? Why would that be?
Yep.
It's called a bidding war, buddy. It's called bidding wars. They have this is I mean, for the top players, there's been good, sweet NIL money for a long, long time.
There have been. Sometimes allegedly in McDonald's bags, may or may not. Well, who knows what happens with that stuff.
But then it turned out to be what did Mike Wilson?
Yeah, I can't remember what it actually was. I think there was a Chick-fil-A bag tossed in there too, but I prefer the McDonald's bag, so I'm going to stick with that.
I'm with you. Let's just keep it to that. It's better. It's a better story.
So bottom line, it was a good weekend for Tennessee. I'm with you. It feels like this is going to start to kind of fade off into the background now as this continues to move forward here. The one thing I'll miss, Joe, is in the immediate aftermath. We had, the Donnie Plowman emails, the Danny White statement, the Josh Heupel statement. I was looking forward to more and more statements coming out. I thought eventually we'd get down to the punter for Tennessee and be like, and another thing, let me tell you this, NCAA. It doesn't look like we're going to get that far.
Well, I'm really disappointed that we didn't get a Tony Vitello statement.
Me too.
At least like a big middle finger on a T-shirt or something. He rips his jersey off, or something like that. Like, I don't know. I have not seen if he's talked about this.
I don't know
if this big gaggle of homers down there has asked him the question, but I may have to get after them again. I mean, get Vitello on the record here.
Joe, on the basketball front, it was another good night for the Vols. They win 86-51 and just crushed Texas A&M at home. So How about the last couple of weeks for Texas A&M? A&M gets the big win at home against Tennessee and basically have imploded since then. Zakai Ziegler, 1 point and 1 rebound away from a triple-double on Saturday night. 9 points, 9 rebounds, 14 assists, and he was in complete and total control of the game out there if you watched him play. Adu with 18 points. Dalton Connect, it felt like, Joe, didn't really have to do much and still ended up with 24 points and 7 rebounds on Saturday. So another big win for Tennessee, and now you're getting into the stretch of these final 4 games here of the regular season, which are going to go a long way of telling the story of what seed they are come NCAA time, but as a dominant win for Tennessee at home on Saturday night.
Yeah, Ziegler is – look, this team has – I think he's becoming a great point guard. And he's always been good. He was a breath of fresh air as a freshman, and then last year he was having a heck of a year, and he gets the ACL, and he's better than ever now. He keeps getting better. And so when you have a point guard like that, and then you have a scoring lottery-level wing like Connect, and now you have a 5 like Adu who can protect the rim and is getting more and more confident attacking it offensively with nice touch and all the things he does. Man, that's a heck of a combination, plus depth and veterans everywhere. Look, I mean, they are rounding into national championship level form, and they've got 4 quad 1 games of their last 4 games. Auburn at home, at Alabama, at South Carolina, Kentucky at home, which to me, one, it's a tough road to try to win the SEC. They're tied for first, and I think that's an absolutely big deal to try to win the SEC. It would be a huge achievement. You know, they haven't won many in school history, and this is a heck of a year. This is the best league in college hoops, period. But also the opportunity to get a 1 seed is right there. You know, I mean, to me, if they win 3 of the 4, which is a tall order, but if they do, then I think they'll get both. I think they'll get the 1 seed and the SEC championship. And the key game, of course, is at Alabama Saturday night.
Yeah, no question about that. And like you said, I mean, just the way that they're attacking the game offensively, but also remaining an elite defensive team. I mean, Texas A&M shot 27% on Saturday night. 27%. And some of that's on them. I mean, they shot 34 threes and made 7 of them. But some of that was also just smothering defense from Tennessee. And look, they've had that really for the last few years, but now you have Connect to go along with it. And it does feel a little bit different this year with the different amount of weapons that they have at their disposal.
Yeah, I mean, you can make the case that this is the best Tennessee team going into an NCAA tournament, and of course, if they're a 1 seed, that'd be the first ever.
Sure,
you know, the best shot going into a tournament for sure. I want to throw this out real quick, Robbie. Jake and Greenbrier says there's going to be a Pete Rose Black Sox level scandal somewhere in the next 2-3 years max. Might be worse than those. That's the thing. I mean, I get the idea there, but I also think of the Alabama situation, right? And now, granted, there was complete idiocy involved there.
Talking about Alabama baseball, yeah.
Yes, Alabama baseball. Think about that. I mean, that is the one thing about, again, everyone now watching. I mean, these sports books are trying to protect their interests, right? And so I do think that things like that, in some ways, get more difficult to happen, don't they? That's what should be the case. But I mean, I'm not saying Jake's wrong. It could happen. I do think that the sunlight on everything in some ways is good.
Well, the one thing I worry about on that front, I worry about it less with the players because I agree with you. I think it's really difficult to pull that off. You do, this is, I think, an era in sports where you really got to pay attention to the officials. And if you're some of these leagues,
that's
you've
always been the case.
Really got to make sure that things are on the up and up with your officials. That's the area that I worry about.
Which is why you invest more in your officials, have the best possible officials, have extremely rigid standards for watching your officials, and you pay them much better than you have been paying them because they are as key in the outcome of these contests as anyone.
No question about it. Joe Rexrode.
Broken record.
Have yourself a wonderful time at the NFL Combine today.
Thanks. I just put on a different shirt that I was going to wear today, and it has a nice big grease spot on it. So it's off to a great start this week.
Just a smooth start. Joe, we'll catch up with you later. Have fun.
Sounds good. Thanks.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. Coming up next, we're going to get into the Nashville Predators. They win their 5th in a row last night in Anaheim, a 5-game winning streak coming back home this week. And now back in a playoff spot. What does it all mean? and where do the Predators go from here? We'll get into that next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Robbie Stanley alongside Nick Keyser here with you on this Monday morning. Joe Rexrode is live from Indianapolis for the NFL Combine. He's off doing some NFL Combine stuff, so we'll catch up with Joe maybe a little bit later, maybe tomorrow. Before
with more stains on his shirt, probably.
It's been a tough start to the day for Rexrode.
Yeah.
He had the stains on his shirt. He had the inability to pack his own microphone. Apparently, there was no hot water available for him this morning.
I assume for coffee, right?
For coffee. So it's a struggle for Joe Rexrode to this point to start the week in the NFL Combine, which is, I think, potentially his least favorite week of the entire year. So a great start for Rexrode.
That or his birthday, right? Because
Either
he
one.
doesn't like his birthday either, which is really rude of himself to not like his own birthday.
Well, it is on December 31st, which is
mine's
it's an
pretty
interesting
close.
time. I know.
Mine's right there with him.
I'm just saying.
So, man, Joe just not having a great time in life. He has the privilege of covering the NFL and so many other grand sports, and he goes,
Wow, Keyser's calling him out.
I don't want to be in Indy.
Be a little bit more grateful.
He should be.
Wow. You know who is having a great time? The
Who?
Nashville Predators.
They are.
They've won 5 games in a row after the embarrassing loss to Dallas the last time they set foot on home ice. And they have swept the road trip. So they beat St. Louis, Vegas, L.A., San Jose, and Anaheim. And now have won 5 games in a row, find themselves back in a playoff spot. And now are staring down the barrel of a 5-game homestand coming up. So you've taken care of business on the road, have beaten some good teams in order to do it, and then took care of some business against some bad teams these last 2 nights out in San Jose and Anaheim. And you got to be feeling good if you're a member of that team right now. Preds are at 66 points. They've won 5 in a row. They are 4 points ahead of St. Louis, 4 points ahead of Minnesota, and now 5 points ahead of the Calgary Flames, only 2 points back of the Kings. Now, the Kings have played in 3 less games than they have. St. Louis has played in 2 fewer games than the Predators have. So some games in hand on the Predators by the teams basically all around them in the standings right now. But what an impressive road trip. And what a job, what a response by the team. And look, we were very critical, obviously, of the loss 9-2 against Dallas. It was embarrassing. I still think it was probably the worst performance that I've ever seen from them live at Bridgestone Arena. And now the charge is on them to come back home and find a way to play better. But you have to be happy with the road trip and the way that they played. And not only the wins, which are obvious, but how they did it. It was secondary scoring. It was good goaltending. It was smart decisions with the puck. The power play really wasn't clicking at a high level. It's not like Philip Forsberg just totally took over on the road trip and carried them to wins, although he did score a few goals and played well. But I think the way that they won some of these games is how they have to win down the stretch here. And the fact that they were able to do it consistently, night in and night out, every game on this 5-game road trip, I think is really encouraging. UC Saros played really well. Kevin Lankinen played really well. And there weren't, for the most part, just huge glaring mistakes, which I think have happened a little bit too often this year. You got to be feeling pretty good about the response of your team if you're Barry Trotz and Andrew Burnett heading back to Nashville today.
Yeah, and you should feel good about your assets, too, going into this trading deadline, because depth scoring was a really good strength of theirs on this trip. And seeing them play in St. Louis, I got the feeling that this was a much different group. The mentality had already shifted, because that was when they had already known that we're not going to Vegas early. We're not going to get the pleasure of this trip, whatever. So they move on. They, reconciled with all of the feelings that they've had throughout this point in the season. And look what they've done. They've turned around on this one single trip and proved to each other, more importantly, that they are here and that they're going to try to fight till the very end, obviously. But I think the most important thing to me about this road trip, Robbie, was, yes, the depth scoring and the guys playing every single role that they possibly could. They never changed the lineup, and I think that that's a huge positive as well. Andrew Burnett has tended to change things up every now and then. Well, they didn't really have to do that at all last night, especially on the back half of a back-to-back, and the Preds have done pretty decent on those this year, surprisingly. But when you have 10 standings points go in your favor on a really long trip going out west. You outscore your opponents 22-10, by the way. And one other thing that I thought was really interesting, the Preds had the most goals for the entire trip come in the third period. So they closed out games.
Yeah, which has not been the case all year, by the way.
No, but
That's been their worst period.
special teams has been a concern still for me because I thought it was worth, throwing this in my tweet was that, look, power play 11%, your PK at 18%. It takes a slight jump after last night, but you go 0 for 4 last night. If you're the Preds on the power play against the Ducks, it's the Ducks. But anyway, they are still struggling in that way. I'm very curious to see how they adjust to that. And then again, the narrative, Robby, it goes back to, okay, how can they do this at home?
Well, and to that point, with this 5-game winning streak, you're 18, 10, and 2 on the road. So you've won you're 8 games over 500 on the road. You were already over 500 on the road to begin the trip. So for the most part, they played pretty well on the road all year long. They're 14 and 15 at home. You got a losing record at Bridgestone Arena. That, number one, it's hard to explain that because the Predators really throughout the history of their franchise have been way better at home than they have been on the road. And now you're 14 and 15 at home. You're 18, 10, and 2 on the road. Can you find a way to keep this thing going at home? Whatever it is at home that's been causing you so many issues all year long, and some of the slow starts, some of the just, quite frankly, not being ready to play out of the gate, whatever it is, can you get that part of it figured out? But it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes from here because I do think, like, after the Dallas game, the trade deadline discussion was pretty easy. Like, man, we're getting close to the trade deadline. You get beat 9-2 at home. And the fact that they've flipped this around and have won 5 in a row, I think has made Barry Trotz's job pretty difficult moving forward. And maybe some people say it shouldn't be difficult and you should stay the course and continue to have the longer view in mind. But if they keep rolling off wins here before the deadline, I don't know how it couldn't affect it to some degree. Let's bring in Chase McCabe into the discussion. Chaser, good morning. How are we doing?
Doing well, Robby. How are you? Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. So the Preds finish off the 5-game road trip last night against Anaheim. They win. They've won 5 in a row. They're on a heater coming back home. We just went over the difference between their road record and their home record. What did you make of what the Predators were able to accomplish on the road trip, and what stands out to you about how they did it, how they were able to get this done?
Well, I've started looking at concerts that they need to sign up for and then cancel because that obviously made a big difference. But no, the obvious thing for me, Robby, is it was the secondary scoring. They weren't relying on Forsberg and O'Reilly and Nyquist to do all the work. Now, you still need the big guns to be the big guns, but and they kind of, what was interesting is they kind of went away scoring-wise for a little bit. They were setting up some stuff, but and then you've seen Forsberg over the course of the last couple of games. The Gus Bus, as I like to call him, got it going like with the empty netters. And they were, you sit there and you go, oh, it's just an empty netter. They were clutch empty net goals. Like, those were ones that, the other teams were fighting and they were kind of trying to get back into the games, and then he puts it in the back of the empty net, and that seals it. And so those were real timely. But to me, it was a secondary scoring. The fact that you had other guys stepping up and down the lineup, Kiefer Sherwood with a 2-goal night, that was what they're going to need to continue to do if they want to make the playoffs.
So what does it all mean? Where do we go from here? What is the trade deadline implications of what the Predators have just done? We'll take your thoughts on all that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Preds riding a 5-game winning streak coming back home. They got 5 in a row coming up at home as well. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Preds fans, don't miss Wednesday night's Smashville live show at Brewhouse South in Cool Springs at 6 o'clock. See your Preds star players up close and personal, plus get autographs and pictures as well. This week's special guests, Michael McCarron and Dante Fabro. Smashville Live brought to you by the Black Abbey Brewing Company and ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode. Robbie Stanley, Chase McCabe, Nick Keyser here with you on this Monday morning. Preds win 5 in a row on the road. They pull off the sweep on the road trip. They come back home, taking on Ottawa tomorrow at Bridgestone Arena. We're taking your thoughts on the Preds, 615-737-1025. Let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Adam in Portland. Adam, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, Robbie. Hey, what's wrong with this team, man? Like, they are so give me some, like, I need to know which direction to go as a fan. Like, this is confusing to us because you get blitzed, probably the worst game I've ever seen before, and we're all talking about it, bagging on them. You go up 9 goals at home against Dallas and Duchesne, and then you go on the road like a hard Western, like long traveling series, and you sweep it. Like I don't know what to think of this team, man. Like I don't know if they're supposed to sell. I would still like lean towards that because right now Saros looks so good that you could probably get more for him. But dude, I don't know. Like this is the most confusing. Like of all the sports and my favorite teams, this is the most confusing one I've ever had. That's where I'm at.
Yep, thanks for the call, Adam. Appreciate it. And Chase, to
Come
that
on,
point,
Adam, be positive, man.
I mean, they did win 5 in a row, but it does make it confusing, right? Like, so,
Sure.
I mean, it felt like after the Dallas game that the direction was pretty clear. I mean, it's like, good Lord, if that's what they've got and that's how they're going to play when the game is of that magnitude, is that high, and you lose 9-2, it kind of tells you everything you need to know. And then they've responded and have won 5 in a row since then. And it's interesting, like they have been basically all year long, Chase, either a win a couple, lose a couple team, or win 3, lose 3. Other than that stretch in November, December, where they went 13-3 and looked really good, and we're just rolling off wins left and right. And now they put together another streak where they've won 5 in a row. So, Chase, if you're Barry Trotz and you're sitting here trying to gather all the information you can, and granted, there's still, a couple of weeks left to evaluate and see how they respond at home here, but what are we thinking if you're Barry Trotz heading into these next couple of weeks here before the deadline?
Look, my phone is not on Do Not Disturb. I'm answering the phone. I'm having conversations. Now, this road trip has changed my mindset. I went into this, just me, Chase McCabe, going, the road trip's going to tell you the story on what they need to do. And Barry Trotz was on with Jared a few weeks ago. He's on every week, but a few weeks ago he said, I look at it as 3-game increments, and we got to take 2 out of 3. Well, they just won 5 in a row, so that right there, I think, was even beyond his expectations. And now it's what can you do at home, because they haven't been as strong at home this year, so they need to figure out how to do this at home. Now, if they show up tomorrow night and they play the way they did against the LA Kings or some of the St. Louis, some of these teams that they played on this road trip, Vegas, and they do that against Ottawa, and then they do it again Thursday night, and then they have a really tough test on Saturday against Colorado, and they're playing hard, playing well against them, then okay. Then maybe the plan you had a couple of weeks ago, that you were taking those phone calls and you were willing to part ways with some things, maybe that has changed a little bit in Barry Trotz's mind. I still am not going to go into full-on buy mode, and I don't think he is either. I think he's going to see, because you still have to look towards the future, right? You still have to continue that plan of knowing that this is a long-term plan. This is not, hey, the Nashville Predators are going to win the Stanley Cup in 2024. I don't think any the future, and I don't envy him. That's a tough position to be in, because you want to make the playoffs. It feels good to make the playoffs. It would be good to make the playoffs, but you can't sell the farm now because you don't have a full farm to sell.
Well, they got 5 games left before the deadline, so they're going to be at home the entire time. They are, once they get back to Nashville, which I assume is either happening today or they're flying back last night, one of the two. They're going to be home from now until the deadline. So you're not going anywhere. You got 5 games at home. And by the way, I mean, look, it's the NHL, so you have to play it out, and anything can happen. You got Ottawa coming up tomorrow night. Ottawa's not very good, although they've been playing better lately, but certainly a winnable game. You got a huge game against Minnesota Thursday. You brought up the Colorado game Saturday. And then after that, to close out the stretch here before the deadline, Montreal, who's not good, and Buffalo, who's not very good. And there's a lot of winnable games coming up for the Predators at home. I said, the San Jose game was a huge maturity test for the group because you had gotten through the 3-game stretch where you had taken down St. Louis, Vegas, and LA, some pretty good teams. Now, could you handle business against teams that you had no business losing to in the Sharks and the Ducks? And to their credit, they did. So that's step one of a test kind of passed there. Now against Ottawa tomorrow night, coming back home off of a road trip. Can you handle that? Like, there should be, and even though you've won 5 in a row on the road, that's great. There should be kind of an eagerness from this group tomorrow night to get back on home ice and right the wrong from the last time you stepped foot in front of your fans, which was about as embarrassing as it gets. And I think that's kind of the next part of that maturity test of, are you a mature enough team to come off the road trip and avoid just totally laying an egg at home again? Because I think if you do that, then the questions come right back up, Chase, of, okay, exactly what is this team and why can't they figure out a way to win and play well at home?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some pride. That's what Hal and I were discussing last night on the broadcast of, you got to have a sense of pride, coming back home, knowing that the last time your fans saw you, it was the worst game in franchise history. I mean, a lot of people are saying that, and I think it probably is. And so you got to come back and you got to show that you have pride and right those wrongs. But I will admit, I mean, that is tomorrow night is the one that I'm concerned about because they've been gone for so long. And, we've talked about this before and it's nobody's fault, but what happens when you come home? Life is there. Like, some of these guys they're married, they have families, and, there's home duties that they have to get to. And that all starts, and then you got to focus on hockey at the same time. You're tired, you're readjusting. There's all those reasons or excuses, but at the end of the day, and Andrew Burnett did this for over 1,000 games as a player.
Yeah.
He knows. Every scenario, that's the great part about this, and so does a lot of his coaching staff. Every scenario there is, they know because they've lived it. And so I know that they're going to be prepared for that with this team. But maturity is the right word to use, Robbie, because it's still, it's got veterans on it, but still there's youngsters that have never gone through this before. And so you need to see how they respond. And I hope it will be a good response.
So they've gotten themselves back in a playoff spot for the time being. And let's say you get a couple weeks down the road here, you get through this homestand, and you're still there. You're in a playoff spot, or maybe you're tied for one or 1 point out, whatever the case is. How does it affect what Barry Trotz does? I said this earlier. Look, I've been on Team Sell. I think the long-term view needs to supersede the short-term view. Now, having said that, like if your team responds this way, I do think as a general manager it forces you to consider things maybe that you weren't previously considering. And I'm with you. I don't know that I would expect Barry Trotz to all of a sudden become like some huge buyer at the deadline, but I do wonder if there are guys maybe after that Dallas game that he was thinking in the back of his mind, all right, it's time to start shopping and seeing what you can get for some of these guys, be that a Carrier, a Fabro, a Barry, a Novak, whoever it is. Are there guys now that they're playing well and they're winning and that those guys are producing that you say, you know what? I'm not moving them. We're going to hold on to them. We're going to see what we got. We're going to see what this group can do. And if you end up getting to the end of the year and you lose a couple of them for nothing, then so be it. I wonder if it changes his approach that way.
I mean, I wonder that too. And look, at the end of the day, if all of the good things happen like we're talking about, how would we feel? Would we be surprised if they just end up standing pat? If he doesn't get offers that he likes, that he thinks are going to help the team in the now or in the future, and he ultimately just decides, I'm going to roll with what I got, and any moves that I'd consider making, I can make this summer. Or, there'd be some guys that you're just going to lose if you don't re-sign them. But that's telling you that you weren't getting a big offer from them anyway. The one I'm curious about is Tyson Barrie. He's not been playing. He obviously it was publicized. There was some frustration there with him.
Yeah.
He hasn't played to the way that people thought that he would. And so, is he still trying to find? Is Barry Trotz still trying to find a dance partner there to trade him? Are there teams that want his services? That one's going to be the one to watch. Tommy Novak, do they get re-signed? That's one that I think everybody's paying attention to. I like Tommy Novak. I'd like to see them figure out a way to keep Tommy Novak, but the price in the term has to be right. I don't think you overpay. No offense to him, but $4 million per is not what I'm looking for, especially knowing that you're still planning for the future and you got a lot of dead cap that you're dealing with too from buyouts and trades and all of that.
Well, the Barry is the one that I feel like if somebody has a semi decent offer for him, which by the way is not going to be very much at this point, I have no doubt they'll make the move. He's just sitting there at this point. I think they're looking to move him. And the other part of this is Barry Trotz, I think, is fully aware of how good Spencer Stasny is and how well he's playing down there. The kid's ready for the NHL, and Barry Trotz knows that. So I think at some point here coming down the stretch, he's going to be here, and he's going to be playing for this team.
The other one too, real quick, Robbie, is if you've decided you're not going to trade Saros or the knock your socks offer hasn't come, do you then shift that to try and trade Lankinen and get something for him, knowing that you're probably ready to bring Askarov up?
Yeah, it's a great question. 615-737-1025, our phone number. What should the Predators do? How does this winning streak affect Barry Trotz's mindset heading into the deadline? We'll take your thoughts on all that. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tomorrow as Vanderbilt men's basketball takes on Arkansas on the road. Pregame at 7:30, tip-off at 8 o'clock. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Robbie Stanley, Chase McCabe, Nick Keys are here with you on this Monday morning. Taking your thoughts on the Preds. They've won 5 in a row. Back at home tomorrow night taking on the Ottawa Senators. I got a texter that says trading Saros should have nothing to do with how they're playing right now. The team isn't a cup contender how it's currently built. If you get the right trade offer for Saros, you do it since you likely have your next top goalie ready for the next step and you need skaters a Saros trade could bring. I do agree with him from this standpoint. Like if you're entertaining the idea of trading UC Saros, if you're Barry Trotz, I do think you have to separate him from some of these other guys that we're talking about. Like I think you can allow the way that your team is playing to influence whether or not you trade an Alex Carrier or influence whether or not you trade a Tommy Novak. Guys that are UFAs coming up that you're trying to figure out, are they going to be here? Are they not? Are you going to bring some of these guys back? How many are you letting go? I think Saros is different from the standpoint of, like, that trade is such a groundbreaking trade that if you get an offer that you feel like you need to do it, then you do it. And you don't worry about how the team is playing at the time, because the Saros trade is about the assets coming back in and setting yourself up for the future. And the same thing, like if you don't get the offer that you're looking for, I don't think you just trade him for the sake of trading him by the deadline either. Like it's a very kind of a delicate balance right now with the UC Saros part of this, and certainly with the way that he's played lately and with the way that they're playing as a team, I do think you look at it and you probably double down on your stance even more if you're Trotz from the standpoint of, yeah, if you want UC Saros, you're going to have to meet my demands. Otherwise, I don't have to trade him right now.
Right. So in your mind, I mean, my demands are pretty high, and based on what I know and what I think and all of those things, it's more than just give me 3 first-round picks and call it a day. Like, I need tangible assets coming back. I need, prospects that are basically NHL ready or already in the NHL, and that I know are not necessarily, you don't know if you're getting a Patrick Kane or, Connor Bedard or whatever, but something pretty close, something that is going to help you for years to come. And those don't grow on trees. And if a team does have that, they're not going to want to part with it. And so that's why, I think Barry Trotz has played this well. He's been pretty honest of, hey, I'm willing to listen, but this is going to be something that a team's not going to be comfortable doing. And so it just kind of is what it is, and it's probably going to result in Saros remaining here at least, until the summer, and then things probably pick back up again. We know how it is with the draft, or if they decide, they want to re-sign him or not. I mean, to me, they're in a win-win scenario right now because the Predators have a premium on a position that teams would do a lot for. You think about how many times have we said with an Edmonton or, even the Kings or whatever, like they have all this talent at forward or defense, but it's like, man, if they just had a goaltender. Right. Well, the Predators have, one that's a bona fide NHL goaltender in UC Saros. They have a really, really, really good backup that, maybe could go be a fringe starter for a team in Lincoln, and then they have one of the top prospects in hockey that is going to be the goaltender of the future. So very, very strong at that position, which I think is a feather in Barry Trotz's cap.
I think so too, and it does. I mean, at some point the leverage flips, right? Like, I think Barry Trotz has got the leverage right now, and I think when it comes to holding strong to whatever his price is, I think right now you can definitely afford to do that. When you start to creep into the summer and he is eligible for a contract extension, like at some point a decision is coming up here for the Predators, and you've got to make it. And whether that's extending Saros and giving him a long-term deal, or whether that's deciding not to do that and riding with Askarov moving forward, like it is interesting, like when exactly is the point where that leverage starts to flip? Because right now, if you're a team and you go trade for UC Saros, it's 2 postseason runs that you've got a chance at guaranteed, right? It's this year's, and then he's under contract next year. So you've got 2 opportunities with him, and then you can also try to extend him to another contract after that. If he gets to the summer and he's eligible for a contract extension, I think that's when the leverage starts to flip a little bit, because at that point, if you're Barry Trotz, you got to make a decision. Like,
Yeah.
Are you extending him or are you not extending him? And if you're not extending him, what does that mean in terms of his trade value? So I agree with you. He can do this right now. He can thank you, Nick. He can do this right now and hold strong to his price. But I do think there is a moment coming where you're going to have to make a decision one way or the other if you're Barry Trotz.
The question is, when is that moment?
Exactly.
I don't even know if he knows that, but you're right. I mean, you're going to have to come to that conclusion at some point, and that's where I don't envy him. I mean, and I hear fans when they're going, well, why can't they just have what happened before? And Pecorine was the starter, and UC Saros was the backup for a few years, and then there was a natural passing of the torch. The big difference that I think people lose sight of, and I've heard you say this and I've said it too, Pecorine was a lot older.
He's 34.
Right. Pecorine was a late bloomer in this league, and Saros was, I think, 21 when he got his first call up. Askarov is now 21. So, and
Saros is 28.
Saros is 28.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, so you're not going to – that would be great. It would be awesome if the Nashville Predators could be the Green Bay Packers and, just keep finding Hall of Fame quarterbacks and, just have them stacked on top of one another. But that's not how it works. And I just don't see that being a scenario here. And quite frankly, I think it would be bad if Barry Trotz tried to force that, because then you're losing the opportunity to gain more assets by trading one of those goaltenders. And I think he knows that. So you got to think of the good of the team, and right now you're in a position to add more to your team if you were to part with either UC Saros or Askarov and get some of those assets back.
I'm kind of ruling out the idea that they buy at the deadline. Is
Yeah.
that too much of an assumption on my part? Let's say they keep winning, and maybe they don't win every game, but let's say they roll off, 3 of the next 5 here, and you get to a situation at the deadline where you're looking at the team if you're Barry Trotz, and you say, you know what? They've won 8 out of their last 10 games. They're firmly in a playoff spot right now come deadline time. Not a huge buy. Like, I'm not saying they're going to go out and spend a first-round pick.
Well, that was going to be my question. Define buy.
Let's say you give up a third-rounder for a middle 6 forward. Would you be okay with that?
See, honestly, I don't think I would, because, again, I'm thinking you're ahead of schedule, right?
Yes.
Like, can we agree on that the Predators are ahead of schedule right now? And so that's great. That's good. That's the sprinkles on top right now. To me, you still don't get off schedule of thinking for the future, because I would love to see this team make the playoffs. I'd love to see them go on a run. We would all love to have 2017 happen over again. But you also have to be realistic in that this team, while they have been consistent over the last 5 games, they've also been pretty inconsistent at spurts during the season. It's been up and down.
Yep.
It's been the definition of a team in transition and a team with, that you're rebuilding a core. And so you have to consider that, and you can't just all of a sudden go, well, you know what? We're in a playoff spot, so let's just go ahead and act like, we're going to win the cup, and let's just go for it. I don't think that would be smart, and I don't think Barry Trotz is thinking that way. So to me, if you added a player, if you traded Tyson Barrie and you got a little something back that's maybe a bottom 6 or something, you're swapping that, then I don't consider that a buy. If maybe you trade a later pick and you're just adding depth, I don't consider that a buy. That I think is okay, but I'm not going out there talking to teams and going, hey, I'm going to give you a second or whatever, give me this guy. Especially because with the cap going up, I think you're going to see some trades with guys that still have term. It's not going to be just expiring contracts. Now, the only thing that I'll say that I might dispute myself on is, with the cap space that the Predators have, if there's a contract out there that so many teams are tight on cap space that maybe Barry's willing to take, a bigger contract to help a team out on the stretch run that, is a player that's not necessarily going to put you over the top and win you the cup, but is not a bad player, then he might consider that. But that's a little bit different because I think you have more leverage where, hey, this guy's making a ton of money. You need to clear the cap space, so I'm not going to give you as much for him.
Yeah, that's a really interesting part of this too, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Like I think over the next couple of years here, as the Predators are turning this roster over, and you're hoping some of the young guys come up and become big pieces of what they're trying to build, I still think you need to leave yourself enough flexibility, number one, from an asset standpoint, and number two, from a cap standpoint, to where if there is an opportunity to strike with some of these game-changing forwards, and sometimes it happens where they become available, and you can get in there and make a trade, you need to position yourself to do it. And we saw it a couple years ago with Matthew Tkachuk. He informed Calgary, hey, I'm not signing again with you guys, and they were able to execute a trade. It doesn't happen often where some of these game-breaking guys become available, but it does happen, and you need to position yourself to take advantage of that if you're the Predators when that time comes.
Yeah, and that's different. That's a different scenario. If you have an opportunity to get one of those guys, then okay.
Well, and that's not going to happen at this deadline.
Yeah, probably not,
I don't think.
But I mean, that would, if it did, that would change your mind.
For sure. No question about that. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, it's time for the Rob Rant. You can check it out every morning here on the program. I got some things going on at the gym that are about to drive me insane. We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game.
Don't make me angry.
Sometimes you have to tell someone to pound sand.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
This is the Rob Rant. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
And then, here we go. Let's go.
It is that time of the day, time for the Rob Rant here on Robby and Rexrode. You can check it out every morning here on the program, either the Rex Rant or the Rob Rant. That's one of my favorite ones.
I never know what I'm going to hear with this.
It's pretty amazing.
Where's Creed?
That is a good question. You hadn't used Scott Stapp in a while.
You mean Cream Bratton Chase?
What's going on?
Yes, that one. Look, the Scott Stapp thing is a gift that keeps on giving, but you got to use it in doses.
Well, Suit, when is it going to become a sweeper?
That's a good question. I can work on that.
Yeah, we'll get it figured out. Don't worry. Nick,
make
you just
that
worry
happen.
about playing.
I will.
Don't play an audio when I'm talking in the middle of a segment.
Our screen is out.
Let's worry about
okay,
that.
our screen is out. I apologize.
Don't be blaming it on other people.
Hey, at least I didn't
Don't
do
do
it.
it.
I didn't have another update. There you go.
That's true. That's true. All right, I have a couple things here, Chase. One is just simply a question, which I'll get into here in just a few minutes. The other, I've got to find a way to put a stop to. So I try to, go to the gym. I try to get there 3 or 4 times a week. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But everybody knows, look, you work out, and there's a locker room that you go into. You work out hard enough. You need a shower after you work out. I have no problem with any of that. If you want to take your time and shower at the gym, sometimes I do that, which is great. I counted in there while I was in there the other day because it was happening to me again. Got a bad habit up there in Hendersonville of there being 8 available showers in the gym locker room. 8 of them. That's a pretty good amount. 8 available showers. I was the only one. So 7 of the 8 showers were available besides me, kind of right in the middle of the floor. I'm doing it the other day. And all of a sudden, this guy just walks into the one directly next to me. Just gets in the shower. Directly in the stall, directly next to mine. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, we got 8 available showers here, dude. I've taken 1 of them. That means there's 7 left.
Oh, no.
And they're all at the end down there. Why are you hopping in the shower next to me? I do not want water from you slinging your body parts all around coming over on me, man. I don't want it. I don't want it, man. There's a lot of things in my life that I want. That's not one of those things. It's very reminiscent of the urinal discussion.
Yep, that's what I was
One's
just
a
thinking.
party, 2's a crowd. Stay away from me, man. If you've got open urinals, go find someone that's not directly next to mine. So this is a problem with the shower that we got to get figured out. If there are open showers that is not directly next to another human being in the gym locker room, please, for the love of God, find another shower that's not directly next to mine. I don't think that's too much to ask, but apparently it is, Chase, because it's becoming a severe epidemic at my gym that I attend.
Look, I like to call these major violations. This is a major violation, an absolute violation. It's just, and the urinal thing is the perfect example of you walk in and like you're the only one in there, and you go to the stall right next to you. Like, what are you doing? And I have actually called somebody out for that before. Been like, hey, I know I'm great and everything, but you're in the bubble, and I don't need you in the bubble right now. Do we think that this is just tunnel vision on this gentleman's part, that he just wasn't paying attention and just was focused and saw the open shower and went for it, or what do we think was going through his mind here?
I don't know. It's a good question. I would probably lean more towards tunnel vision had this not continued. It's happened to me 3 times in the last 3 weeks. And
no.
it's not the same person every time, because if it was, like, might have to open the door and flatten somebody. But I feel like there's a little bit of a laziness element to it. Like the shower that I was in is closer to the hallway. So maybe they just don't want to walk all the way down to the end. So maybe the charge is now on me to just go to the end of the hallway when there's available showers and run like a test, kind of an experiment here to make sure nobody follows me.
Yeah, no, I would try that.
But either way, it needs to be stopped. The other thing is it's just a question that I have, and I don't know the answer. So I'm going to throw it out to you, and I'm going to throw it out to the general public. Is the gym bathroom an acceptable place to shave your face? Is it an acceptable place to bring your shaving equipment from home and stand there at the sink and shave your face? Is that an acceptable thing to do at a gym bathroom? Full disclosure, I have not done it. I don't shave very often anyway. But I've never seen anybody under the age of like 60 do this. So it could very well be a generational thing. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. My initial reaction when I see it is like, really? Like, this is the place? You don't think this could be better served at home? But maybe I'm wrong. What is it? Is the gym bathroom an acceptable place to shave your face?
No.
I think. Thank you, Liam. I think there's a couple of. You got to ask yourself a couple of questions. Now, I probably would not do it because, again, I'm like you. I have a beard, and so I don't have to do something every day. So I can look at it as if I'm taking a shower at the gym, then I'm probably I can work on my beard, at home. I don't have to worry about it. Now, if you're one of those people that does shave every day and this shower is your morning shower because you've decided to go to the gym in the morning and then you're going to do your shower routine at the gym and then go to work, then that's probably a different situation. But you're saying you haven't really seen that.
No, not much. Like, it's just like you pull up to the gym bathroom with your shave. I mean, this one guy had like this whole bag, and there's like 25 disposable razors in there and some shaving cream. I was like, man, this guy's ready. He's ready for any type of shaving that you could possibly want to do. I had people commenting. I put this on Facebook over the weekend, and people were like, yeah, I've seen some people like do this in the sauna, which is just a major violation. You can't be shaving any part of your body in the sauna or the steam room. It's disgusting. But with the gym bathroom, I am open to just being wrong here. Like, that's a legitimate question I have for our listeners is that acceptable behavior?
This is a tough one. This is a very tough question. I'm going to say that if you're just like shaving your face and you don't have a beard and you're not doing the beard trimmer and getting hair everywhere and all that stuff, I'll allow that, but face only. Like, I don't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Face only.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Got a texter that says absolutely not. Robert in Spring Hill says shaving in a public gym, shower, bathroom? Hell no. Jules on the text line says yes, an acceptable place to shave your face. I do it all the time. Had another texter that says as long as you clean up after yourself, it is acceptable. So it's a split bag here on the text line.
That's key. I mean, I guess the thing that would be the gross factor is just that, you're leaving hair behind, right?
Right.
But, I mean, you still need to kind of, like, if you brush your teeth, you want to wash the sink out too, right? You want to be – you don't want to leave anything. Right. Like, so, I mean, it's kind of the same principle in my mind that, if you're doing something like that in a public bathroom, you need to be a little extra in cleaning up after yourself.
Chase, this has been a nice therapy session for me. I feel better. I'm hopeful that we can be a little bit more responsible with the way we're choosing showers at the gym. That could be that's my hope to come from all this. Just a public service announcement.
I agree, and I'm glad you feel better.
Yes, thank you very much. Coming up next, we'll be joined by Corey Curtis from News 2. We'll get his thoughts on the Predators' winning streak and the NFL Combine underway this week. What are we most curious to learn from Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan? All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley here with you alongside Nick Keyser. Joe Rexrode live from the NFL Combine. He'll be back with us tomorrow. Was on the show earlier. Rough start for Joe Rexrode this morning, but handling some Combine duties up there in Indianapolis. So let's talk about that and more. We welcome in our friend Corey Curtis from News 2 on our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Corey, good morning. How are you?
I am delightful. I'm so joyous that we've gotten rid of the dead weight and we can have some private time.
Yes, we can. Me and you together. Been waiting for this for a long time, my friend. A long time. Corey, we've been discussing the Predators this morning, a 5-game winning streak, so they get embarrassed on home ice 9-2. Enough to the point where you think, all right, well, that's probably all she wrote for this season, and the path forward for Barry Trotz seems clear. And what a response by them. What do you make, number one, of that response? And number two, what do you think this means for Barry Trotz as he's trying to make a decision on what to do over the next couple of weeks before the deadline?
Well, it's remarkable what happens when someone other than Forsberg and O'Reilly score.
There is that.
And I think they had 15 different goal scorers on the road trip. And, if you look to a lot of the game, I don't know how many goals Forsberg scored in the 5. I know he scored last night, but I don't think he had many more other than that. And Nyquist scored from that first line, but 3 of them were empty netters. They got a lot from, Kiefer Sherwood and Luke Evangelista and, Yakov Trenin scored, and Mark Jankowski got sent down and pulled up 8 times between 5 games and managed to score. I don't understand that at all. But, they got secondary scoring, and they got, other people to produce. Did it take canceling a concert for that to happen? I don't know. But, they show that they can win, when those guys deliver. Now, should they be buyers or should they be sellers? Look, when they lost 9-2, I was right there with you. Yeah, you gotta. I don't want to give away good players. Okay, I'm not the person who's like, trade Forsberg, trade Yossi, trade. Get what you can. You don't just get those guys, and when you trade for draft picks, there's no guarantees that you replace those guys. In case you haven't seen with the A.J. Brown trade, all right, there's no guarantee. So I'm not for trading away great players just to get assets, all right. But as I said, I think on Jared's show, like when the Titans traded A.J. Brown, they didn't have another one waiting in the wings. If the Preds want to trade UC Saros, they've got another one waiting in the wings. The guy just won like 25 games in a row in Milwaukee. And so we ask ourselves the question, Robbie, that we have been asking for, it feels like 20 years here. Do you want to keep fighting for 8th and getting a spot in the postseason, or do you want to be one of those teams? And I think if they want to be one of those teams, they need more than they've got. Yes, it's nice to see them winning with the group that they've got, but I don't think that anybody thinks this group is a threat to win the Stanley Cup. And so that's the goal. How do you get there? And I think that's the long, hard look at it.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And to your point, with guys that you have on the roster right now, when you've got UC Saros in net, when you've got Forsberg, when you've got Yossi, and a handful of other guys that have been around and established players in this league, you're not going to be bad enough to be, picking in the top 5, right? And they've been that way for 25 years. Exactly. So if you know that, how do you go about getting one of these elite players? Because that's what it's all about, Corey. Like you gotta find a way to add elite forwards to this roster by any means necessary.
Mm-hmm. How many teams have we seen just think out loud tank to do it? Yep. The Blackhawks did it to 3 Stanley Cups. The Pittsburgh Penguins did it. How many cups have they won?
3.
With those. But I'm agreeing with what you're saying. You can keep adding mid-level players and have nice young players that you're trying to build. And once in a while, you may strike something with one of those guys. But have they? Hornquist, it was a seventh rounder who turned into a 30 goal scorer for him one season. They don't have a lot of those guys that they've drafted and developed, and they've turned into a consistent goal scorer. Because have they drafted a forward in the top 10 other than David Legwand?
Maybe I'm trying to remember if Colin Wilson was in the top 10. I think he was close, but to your point, no, not anywhere near.
Yeah,
enough.
I think he was 7. Yeah, I think and so they haven't had many stabs at that, and they've taken the reach. Who's the Finnish kid who's with the Kraken now?
Tolvanen.
Everybody. Yeah, Tolvanen. He was a guy with a lot of offensive upside, and so you took a gamble on him at the end of the first round. It just never worked out. Because you're just constantly searching for that goal scoring, and so they do need assets to try to acquire one of those guys, because to continue to go, with the type of player that they've got, while they're predator type of players and while they're competitive, I have a hard time believing they're going to hoist the cup with Kiefer Sherwood.
Corey Curtis from News 2 with us here on Robby and Rexrode. So, Corey, the Combine this week in Indianapolis, Rand Carthon, Brian Callahan addressing the media tomorrow. On the Carthon front, what are you most curious to hear about? What are you most curious to learn about from Carthon when he addresses the media this week?
Well, there's stuff I want to hear, and then there's stuff he'll say, right. and he's just not going to say anything, and that's not criticizing him. Not many GMs do say much of anything, but it's just interesting because last year we were wondering who was calling the shots. All year we were wondering who was calling the shots, and now we know he's calling the shots, and so this will be his draft. Truly his draft. And so it'll be interesting to see, what his strategy is as far as the assets that the Titans have got. Do they want more draft picks? Because you're in a position where you could trade down and get more picks, and they could use more picks. They don't have a third rounder, right?
Yep.
If they could trade down and get, a 3 and more, and stay in the first round, and I don't want to trade way down in the first round. But that could be beneficial to them. We all play Mock Draft Simulator, and it's interesting when I find when the 2 tackles are gone, my decision making gets really hard, and because you start looking at what tackles are beyond there.
Yeah.
And I've been one who's been like, I'm not afraid to take the receiver now, and that's been a change in my thinking over the years. Is I haven't been afraid to get away from the offensive line, because I've always been an offensive line guy. But I think I've got some shell shock from the last 2 years, and this has really got to get fixed. And not getting one of those elite tackles is kind of scary. What if these guys don't work out? And so I think the work they're going to do in Indianapolis and at these pro days to decide how good these guys are. I'm talking about the 2 tackles in particular. I think is really important.
Where does backup quarterback, and by backup quarterback I mean established veteran player, where does that fall on your list of priorities this offseason for the Titans? Or are you comfortable going with Will Levis and Malik Willis as your quarterback duo heading into next season?
I'm going to try not to be rude with the answer to that question.
Okay.
They need a backup quarterback. Now, I'm not going to break the bank for it, because they're not in position to compete for the Super Bowl. So I don't think it's necessary to say, well, this guy, he could get us to the playoffs where we could make a run at the Super Bowl. We miss Levis for a few weeks. Look, weirder things have happened, right? But I wouldn't go bonkers. Now they've got cap room, which is the other good thing. But I love adding a Gardner Minshew at the right price, because the guy wins games, and you'd make Indianapolis worse for when Anthony Richardson inevitably gets hurt again. If you look at that guy's track record, that's just going to happen, especially with how they plan on playing him.
How would you feel about Jameis? If Jameis is out there and available, bringing him in as a backup quarterback?
I like Jameis working with a quarterback-driven head coach, so it wouldn't scare me quite as much with Brian Callahan, because Jameis has a ton of ability, but decision making has always been his bugaboo. And so if you could get a guy who is in his pocket all the time with decision making, I think you could make him a better player. He can move the ball. He can throw the ball. I mean, you're not Blaine Gabbert. He can get you up and down the field. He just, he's got a lot of Fitz magic in him. And, it can be great and it can be devastating. So it would have to be at the right price. I think I'd be more interested than in that than an A.J. McCarron's, who's never done anything, but he's connected to the head coach. I'm all about adding some talent. Mitch Trubisky. I know plenty about Mitch Trubisky. They don't need Mitch Trubisky. All right. I know the list isn't great out there, and I honestly don't remember what it is. But
not a ton of great options.
But I think Minshew and Winston are two of the better options out there.
Does it bother you, Corey, that Caleb Williams isn't throwing at the combine, knowing that he's probably going to be the quarterback of the Bears? What do you think?
Not at all. Why? You know what I would do? I'd sit on my couch and say, just call me when the draft gets here. I mean, he's got a body of work. Just look at it. Look at the ridiculous throws that guy makes that no one else can make. All right? And, yes, part of it is answering questions about your compete level and the person you are and, the pride that you've got about you, but there's also, the hay is in the barn for Caleb Williams. All right. He would have been the first pick of the draft last year. So he does not have a ton to prove in my estimation. I think it'd be valuable for him to sit down and talk with teams, but as far as working out, I don't believe I would do it if I were him. I might do my pro day, and I might show up to the combine. And maybe he could throw if he wanted to. I don't know. If he just wanted to show off, I can throw 60-yard darts. I don't know. But he's without question the first pick in the draft. Look, and I've said this before. You can like Justin Fields, and that's fine. I like Justin Fields. I don't think Justin Fields is a disaster for the Bears. And it's hard to say because the Bears have been so bad as a team. But we all know what uber elite quarterbacks look like even on bad teams. Look at Andrew Luck. I mean, he dragged the Colts across the finish line because he was awesome. And, that's not Justin Fields. He's not good enough to drag the Bears across the finish line. Now, you hope the Bears get good enough. And with a good team, maybe Justin Fields is good enough to get it done. But that's not what I want. I want Patrick Mahomes. I want Josh Allen. I want guys that elevate everything around them because they're freaking awesome. And that's what I think Caleb Williams has a chance to be. And so picking Caleb Williams is a painfully easy decision to me if I'm the Chicago Bears management.
This week,
whether he throws another pass or not.
This week is such a prime example of just the stranglehold that the NFL has on the sporting calendar. The amount of people that talk about the NFL Combine and these guys running drills is just amazing to me.
Well, and they do a brilliant job of spacing, because the Super Bowl's been over for 3 weeks?
Yep.
And so, the NFL's away, but not very long, and now we got another big event. And then in 3 weeks, guess what happens? Free agency gets here.
Yep.
And that's a big one, and that goes on for weeks. And then, a month later, we've got the draft. I mean, so
they've gotten pretty good at this thing.
And then a month later, we've got camps. So they give you a little break, and then they say, all right, it's time to crank it up again. And we're always going to be, in your forefront here. And so, yeah, they do a fantastic job. They absolutely do. And, it's part of it's the product and the anticipation. And again, there are 32 cities right now thinking to themselves, we've got a chance if this happens, if that happens. And there aren't any other sports like that. There really aren't. I mean, just go back to the Houston Texans. I mean, there are not a lot of sports like that where that type of stuff happens.
No question about it. Corey, great stuff as always. Thanks so much for taking time to be with us, and we'll talk to you next week.
It's such a relief, Robbie. It really was. My only disappointment is tomorrow I got to go to Indy and I got to see Joe and his Lego haircut there.
You do. There's no question about it. He's going to be in a
I
great
met
mood,
another
too.
guy from Michigan State like last week, and he had the same haircut.
There's just
And
like,
I saw Joe, and I'm like, what the heck is going on in Lansing where you guys all have the same ridiculous haircut?
Just
Do they have
clones.
one barber?
we know one haircut. This is what you're going to get. The Rexrode
like-
is what we call it.
Well, it's the Lego. They just slap it on your head and they snap it on.
Well, Corey, have yourself a wonderful time in Indianapolis.
Thanks, Robbie.
You're very welcome. We'll react to what Corey had to say. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. More thoughts on the Titans and the NFL Combine coming up next. We'll get back into the Preds this hour as well. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls. Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. We are live from our Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Robbie Stanley alongside Nick Keyser. Rexrode is in Indianapolis, live at the NFL Combine. He's taking care of some duties up there. So Rexrode will be back with us tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. And he was a little bit disheveled in the 6 o'clock hour.
He was. Yeah, he was very distraught that he didn't have his coffee. I mean, look, I would be too, because I always walk in here with my, my big Tervis or whatever I come in with, or I make it here. But Joe just was not off to a good
struggling.
day. Yeah.
I mean, you're in there dealing with a situation right now.
I am. Look, I mean, I hate to call her out, but my fiance, Kristen, for those that don't know, I proposed last September, and
she said yes.
She said yes. Thank the Lord, right? But look, I think we all have our moments, and this is the first one that I've had with her in 2 years, by the way, which is great. But when you forget your own car keys in my car and have to go to work and be at a meeting by 9, I'm sorry. Like, what can I do? I physically cannot leave this room in the 3 hours that I'm here, basically, unless I have to go to the restroom or make coffee.
Thank you for clarifying.
And I cannot help. I cannot. And I never rant. I ranted one time when Robby was on his leave when Allison was born. And I had one rant. This is my other rant. I'm like, please, for the love, do not forget stuff in my car. And she put stuff under her seat the entire time when she's a passenger. Why?
This is a regular thing.
Day. Yeah.
Under the seat.
Yeah. Under the seat. Every car ride, wherever we go.
Okay.
To dinner, to hockey, wherever it is, okay? It's okay. I can deal with it, but she's taking care of it. She's Ubering. I didn't have anybody available to go help her, but I had a phone call before the YMCA theme came on, and I was like, oh boy.
Look, I was just worried about you. I mean, you were kind of disheveled in there.
I know,
you were playing stuff that you weren't supposed to be playing. You kind of throw you off your game a little bit.
I just
want to make sure you're okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. And Kristen's okay too, so.
That's good.
But my golly, just a look into our lives is more of a drama than I realized.
There you go.
But anyway.
Carson on the text line, going back to Caleb Williams, says Caleb Williams overrated, not even a top 5 quarterback in this class. Look at the crappy conference he played in. There's no defense being played.
How do you know that?
On the text line.
That's what I want to say. You don't know that yet. There's no way. You know what?
Well, look, to call him not a top 5 quarterback in the class
that's just dumb.
Is a little bit ridiculous. Now, I will say on the Caleb Williams front, all year long, people have been acting like, he's the next Patrick Mahomes. And I think it's a little bit crazy to say that too. Now, watching him play, can he make some ridiculous throws? Is he super talented? Yes. There's no question about that. And I agree with Corey when he says he would have been the first pick last year. He would have been the first pick last year. And he's probably going to be the first pick this year, although, there is some momentum for Drake May. But Caleb Williams probably going to be the first overall pick this year. He's uber talented. Now, we've seen plenty of uber talented quarterbacks come into the league and that haven't worked out. We'll see what it looks like. Like the Bears, look, man, they've been a dumpster fire. And, Justin Fields, I think, is a good player. I certainly think Caleb Williams, from a raw ability standpoint, probably has more upside than Justin Fields does. I'm interested to see where Fields ends up. But there's no guarantee if they take Caleb Williams that he's going to work out, or certainly that he's going to work out to the level in which he's expected to. I mean, look, we made fun of that FanDuel list last week, but, I mean, it's not necessarily just them. Like, FanDuel had him, I think, as the 12th best quarterback the moment he steps foot into the league.
Something like that, yeah.
Over Aaron Rodgers. It's like, all right, well, let's calm down a little bit. Is Caleb Williams going to be a generational type of quarterback? I don't know. I think he's got the skill set to do it, but there's so much more to it than the skill set that is required, which we've seen before. So
absolutely.
I'm really, I still think he's going to be the first overall pick. I'm really fascinated to see how that goes in Chicago.
You talked about Justin Fields there for just a second because this involves what the Bears are going to do with their future. And I immediately go to where he could go. And I've had several conversations with people here and just with my friends, and it's look, Justin Fields, I think, would be a great fit for the Falcons. And, I mean, if you go to a team that is trying to, pretty much rebuild, like the retool-esque word, but I think it's interesting that Fields, in the way that he was speaking on the 33rd Team podcast with the St. Brown brothers, I just thought the way he was phrasing things was interesting to me, at least. And I'm not going to read too much into a podcast, Robbie, but I think it was interesting, at least, that he was open to the fact that he knows that something is evident, whether it's to stay in Chicago or it's to be traded. And that's fine. And I would rather a player be well aware of his status in the NFL than not at all. That's great. So we'll have to see where that lands him for sure. Where else could he go? I mean, Kirk Cousins is also looking for a job as well for the most part. So I don't know if that's going to be a bidding war necessarily, but we'll have to see how it all shakes out.
Byron on the text line says, wife and I both backed into each other's cars in the driveway. Since I hit hers first, it was such a glorious morning when I heard the front door open on that second smash a few months later. Just avoid the cars in the driveway. Nick bringing up marital disputes. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll take more of your thoughts on the draft, the NFL Combine. We'll also get back into the Predators coming up next as well. All that ahead, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Nick Keyser here with you on this Monday morning, taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. NFL Combine going down this week. Rand Carthon, Brian Callahan scheduled to speak to the media tomorrow at 9:15 and 9:45 respectively. So we'll keep you covered on all those things. Joe Rexrode live from the Combine in Indianapolis. He'll be back with us tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our buddy Mark in Nashville. Mark, good morning. How we doing?
Yeah, what's up, Robby? What's up, Nick? I guess Nick's sitting in the seat for Joe
What's
this
up, Mark?
morning, right?
He is.
Yeah, how y'all doing, man?
Rexrode's been replaced.
Yeah, no, that ain't gonna happen, Robby. You know I'm gonna veto that, man. Y'all been taking shots at Joe all morning. You know I listen. When I hear somebody taking a shot at Joe, I'm calling, man.
I hear you.
I can't let y'all do that to Joe. Joe, get you some chocolate milk and a Krispy Kreme donut. You'll be okay up there in Indy, man.
He sounded a little depressed this morning, Mark. I'm just gonna be real with you. He was on the struggle bus.
Yeah, he'll be all right. He'll be back tomorrow, man. I try to cheer him up, man, in the morning when he comes back in. But, you know, I was listening to y'all talk about the draft, and somebody had mentioned that Caleb Williams is going to be a bust. We can't determine that right now. Nick was right. I mean, you can't. I mean, he could end up being a superstar. I mean, he's going to the Bears. The Bears got a lot of picks. It depends on if he has a good OC around him and some great playmakers around him. We don't know what he could be, but I'm kind of the thinking that he could be a very good quarterback. And, you know, I'm going to agree with Corey when he said that maybe he should just throw on pro day, forget the combine and all that. The work's been put in. I mean, you got a lot of film on him. I mean, we know what he could do. I really do think he's going to be a great player. But, Robbie, I'm going to tell you this story before I go real quick.
Okay.
I heard you talking about the YMCA and all that. Okay, you know I drive a truck for a living, so we're in a truck stop one day in a bathroom. Guy sitting in there, man, naked in the sink, taking a little free bath right there in the with 5-6 guys, truck drivers in the restroom. He's sitting there naked in the sink, man, washing himself.
In the sink?
In the sink, Robbie.
How big's this sink?
Robbie, big enough probably for a little baby, a toddler or something, maybe a 2-year-old or something. Yeah, he was in the sink, man, scrubbing himself off and everything, Robbie. I mean, it was so embarrassing.
How old was this guy, Mark?
Man. He probably had to be in his 40s, 50s and stuff, man. I mean, man, they do give you free showers when you fill up.
That's
you
true.
know, if you do that over there, they give you a free shower. I mean, man, really?
Oh man.
Yeah, man.
That's tough.
Yeah, we went all and got the manager and stuff, man. The manager ran him out of there and stuff, man. I mean, I thought that was so really nasty, Robbie, to be honest.
I would say so.
Yeah, it really was. But hey, man, y'all have a good day.
You
Just
too,
wanted
Mark.
to throw that at you and stuff. Y'all lay off Joe. Be careful, Nick.
Thanks, Mark.
Will do, Mark.
Appreciate
See
you,
ya.
buddy.
Oh, my gosh. What a mic drop. Like, what a story.
I can't say I've seen that one before.
I bet he's seen more than that,
Hopefully
though.
I never do.
Man.
In the sink.
That's bad.
It's a bold strategy.
That's really bad. Yeah, bold move, Cotton. Let's see how it works out for him.
Preds, we'll transition. I don't know how to transition every
I don't
one.
know either.
Preds sweep the road trip. They win 5 consecutive games. They're back at it tomorrow against the Ottawa Senators. All right, Nick, we've gotten Chase's thoughts on it. Let's get your thoughts on it. How does this influence what you think the Predators and Barry Trotz should be looking at as the trade deadline approaches? Now less than 2 weeks away from the deadline, coming up on March 8th.
So my sentiment now after just watching them on the road is the biggest question is, can they keep doing this? And I think the easy answer is you would hope so, yes. However, I don't think it really changes how I feel. I think you still have to approach the deadline as a seller. I think you still have to look at it in terms of what can we add to this draft class? What can we do to bolster this team for the long run? And look, I even think that to the credit of the Admirals, as much as I've kind of been watching them, would Barry consider possibly packaging something to get something big from a guy in Milwaukee? Not to say that Reed Schaefer is a trade asset, but look, Reed's been here for a year. You hope that he becomes something, but could someone like a Reed Schaefer be packaged to get something bigger for the long stretch? Could it be, a part of a UC Saros trade where you're trying to move up in the draft, or if you're trying to do something? I don't know. I think it's a good question, but to me, at least, the same guys are on the trade talk block, I would say. You've got Carrier, you've got Fabro, you've also got Tyson Barrie, so you've got at least 3 D-men. And then I think the rest of the guys that are on offense that could be dealt, I mean, it's kind of whoever you'd really like, aside from O'Reilly, Forsberg, and maybe a Nyquist, but maybe not really. He's on a 2-year deal, and I just think, looking at it at a whole grand scheme of things, it wouldn't really surprise me if someone like a Trennan or even a Sissons gets traded, and we don't really see it coming. Sissons is on a great tear this season. He's on pace for a career high in both goals and assists, and I just don't think contenders can shy away from the fact that the Preds actually have some pretty decent depth players. And so that's my approach to it. I think they will be sellers, Robbie. Are they going to sell Saros? I think I'm on a no right now.
So I even think he doesn't even fit into the buyer seller conversation.
It doesn't.
To me, his situation is just so different. To me, it's about an organizational shift. You're either keeping what you're doing and you're going with UC Saros and you're comfortable paying him the money on a long-term extension, or you're shaking things up to the degree where you're trading him and trusting the kid to do it. I mean, if you do that, and I'm not saying it's the wrong move to do that, that's a pretty seismic shift and commitment to the young guy to go that way. And, I think that's a decision where the buyer-seller part of it doesn't really come into play. It's, what do you think your future at goaltending looks like, and are you comfortable extending UC Saros with the money that's going to be required to do that? If you are, then you can do that. I mean, you can have conversations right now. You can officially do that on July 1st. If you're not, and you want to move on, and you've just either you're not comfortable paying Saros the money, or you just love what you've seen from Askarov and think he's got a chance to be really special. If that's the way you go about doing it, then I think that is a decision that has to be made on its own, independent of the results. And I think some of these other decisions, like a Carrier or a Novak, I do think the results before the deadline you can allow those to dictate what you do there to a certain degree, where I don't think you can with the goalie part.
No. And yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think Novak, for the price range of other agents, what Elliott said of what he's valued at for $4 million, that's just not it. And I think
there are people that disagree with that, though. We got a texter that says if he's a top 6 player for you, $4 million is really not that bad of a deal. To which I would agree.
Right.
The question is Tommy Novak a top 6 player on a winning team? That's what you have to determine. Is he a top 6 player right now on this team? Yes. Is he a top 6 player when you get through all this on a winning team where he's playing a role where he can match up against other elite centermen? He can match up against some of those forwards on both sides of the ice, by the way. You got to be able to play in your own end too. Is he a guy that is a top 6 forward on a winning team? And that's what I think you have to determine if you're Barry Trotz.
Yeah, and in my mind, the answer is no right now. I mean, look, if you're a Colorado or if you're a New York Rangers team that wants to add at the deadline and you want to be stronger down the middle, I don't think they'd be interested in Novak. I mean, if you're talking about playing both sides of the ice well enough, I don't think Tommy has shown that through and through. Now, has he had glimpses of it? Absolutely. But I don't think he's that guy. I don't think he's that guy yet. And look, everyone that's classified him with a younger player, he's not. He's 27 years old on this team and has risen and he's been a late bloomer for sure, playing pro hockey, which is quite okay, because if you get in this league, you'll take any chance that you can get. But I just don't think that that's how you have to look at it. And I think if you did do a bridge deal of some sort with Novak, then you could maybe do something like a 2 or 3 year deal, see what he's got. But it's definitely not coming at the $4 million average. I would maybe give him 3 for that, but I don't know. There's a lot just to think about there for sure, Robbie.
Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Nate. Nate, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
What's up, guys? I have always been, since kind of, I guess, the beginning of the season, really, even when they were playing really well, because I kind of figured it was, kind of a false or whatever, but they finally came down to earth. They should obviously be a seller. And I have been concerned that this winning streak, especially against Vegas, that they would, or that Barry would change his mind and be somewhat of a buyer. But Alex Doherty said something last week that really kind of helped me feel a little better, that Barry wants the guys to play better at home. And to me, he doesn't feel like the road game is what should be the measuring stick. What do y'all think of that?
Yeah, thanks for the call, Nate. Certainly they got to be better at home. They're 14-15 at home, which is not good enough if you're going to be a serious playoff threat. Like you got to be better on home ice. Like I don't know that Barry Trotz meant that there's no value in gauging how a team does on the road, but I do think good teams find a way to perform at home and take advantage of those points. Now the thing with that is you got 5 games coming up all at home before the trading deadline. So you've got 5 games at home in a row, and you're going to get a good opportunity to turn that thing around. Like if you win 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5 before the deadline, I do think that's going to make the decision pretty difficult for Barry Trotz.
And it will. And look, the schedule is kind of in the favor of the Preds in this situation as well. But how do you handle playing a Buffalo, playing an Ottawa that comes in town here? That's the main question, because maturity is the right phrase just to be aware of right now. I mean, how are the guys going to grasp playing at home? McDonough even said post-game about a month ago, said that we've got to be past this point of growing pains at home. It's just ridiculous. I mean, and all the sentiment is in the locker room is that exactly. It's everybody is frustrated with how they've done at home. Now, is it because you're at home and you're just in front of your own fans? Well, not really sure that should be something that you should be thinking of necessarily, but why is that adding more pressure? Not sure why it's any different at home. Quite frankly, the Preds, this could be the year where we look at it and go, this might be one of the worst home records we've ever seen. And why is that? I'm not really sure. Is it the pressure? Is it just because you're not consistent enough? I don't know. I think that's just what you have to draw it down to, at least for now, unless unless one of these guys goes, well, here's why, but I don't know.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We got some tickets to give away, a pair of tickets to see Dr. Jordan Peterson at Bridgestone Arena coming up on Friday, April 5th. Be caller 5, 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. Caller 5 will win a pair of tickets to see Dr. Jordan Peterson at Bridgestone Arena on Friday, April 5th. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in. Final segment of the day. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Nick Keyser here with you on this Monday morning. We got some tickets to give away to see Jordan Peterson at Bridgestone Arena on Friday, April 5th. We call it 615-737-1025. More tickets to give away, 615-737-1025. Call the 3, will win a pair of tickets to see Jordan Peterson at Bridgestone Arena. Coming up on Friday, April 5th, 615-737-1025. Preds back in action tomorrow, coming off a 5-game winning streak on the road. I got a texter on the text line going back to the confusing part of this team front, talking about how you can never figure this team out in regards to the trade deadline. As a fan, you should be excited. Trotz is being put in a difficult situation what to do. Do I believe they're ahead of schedule? Yes. I think if you're a buyer, buying is staying pat. I think if Trotz should stand firm on the knock my socks off deal and trading Saros. And if he's still on the team after the deadline, that's you buying. I want something similar to the deals like Ekholm or Jeannot got last year. This is from Josh from Lebanon on the text line. I'm interested to see if one of those deals exists. I mean, look, nobody saw the Tanner Jeannot deal coming to the extent that it did last year in terms of the return, which I think it was 1 year ago today when they traded Tanner Jeannot. I believe that is 1 year ago today. I know it's 1 year ago today that David Poyle announced his retirement, and I think those happened on the same day. So, been a year ago since you got that trade. Is there anybody out there that could fetch you something like that you have? I don't think so. Like, outside of Saros, obviously. But, like, would a Colton Sissons be valuable at the deadline? Would Novak, would he be valuable? Would there be teams that would give up significant draft capital for him? Alex Carrier on the back end. Or, if you keep winning, like if you're Barry Trotz, do you look at it and say, you know what? I like the group that we have. We've got some unrestricted free agents that you're going to have to figure out. But given what the team has done, I'd be willing to lose those guys for nothing if it comes down to it. I don't know. That's the interesting predicament that you're in. I think that's what makes it tough if you're the Predators in terms of exactly what to do here. But no question, I didn't think we'd be having this conversation after that 9-2 Dallas game. And whether you want to blame the U2 concert or just the natural response that comes to getting embarrassed after that, for whatever reasons, Predators have locked in here. And they've started to pay attention to the finer details in the game. The secondary scoring has come about, and it's made things pretty interesting here this week coming back home.
Yeah, it absolutely has, and you are right. It was a year ago today that there were basically half the draft that Tampa had was traded away to get Tanner Jeannot, and the Predators obviously were able to capitalize in the draft and got some pretty big high-profile guys in Matthew Wood and then Tanner Molendyke, and even got I like Cole Lind as well, someone that you can kind of look forward to in the future. That's a grinder. I've been watching him some in the WHL this year with the Red Deer Rebels. But yet, Robbie, I think looking at this deadline in general, there's a lot to be excited for. There's a lot of animosity, I feel like, with this trade deadline. What are they going to do in the long stretch? I'm curious to see what other teams in the Central do, to be honest with you, because some of these teams are in the hunt. I don't see a Wild being a buyer whatsoever. What do they do with Marc-Andre Fleury? I saw that our friend Joe Smith, he was talking about how they don't think that there's going to be a trade with Flower, but they do think, based on what Flower has said, he'd like to stick it out there and see if they can make a push. So, and John Hines will be here on Thursday with those Wild. And, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what some of these contenders are interested in as well. Kevin Weeks and Elliot Friedman, everyone's going to be like, hey, these guys are on the block, or hey, I've heard this guy's name thrown out there. You're going to have a lot of that in the next little bit. Trade deadline's coming at 3 p.m. on March 8th. So we have a lot to talk about before then. How did the Predators handle the deadline approach? How will Barry Trotz obviously approach his first trade deadline by himself? He has no David Poyle. Well, David Poyle's, I think he's here for moral support. Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure that he will. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting. How will they do with all of that, and how will the staff approach the longevity of this franchise? Those are a lot of things, but pressing questions for this franchise, Robbie.
Well, in the meantime, you got 5 games at home before the deadline. And if you keep winning, then I do think the equation starts to change a little bit from the Barry Trotz point of view. We can argue whether or not it should change, and I'm certainly open to those conversations, but I do think the reality of the situation is it does change a little bit. So an opportunity for the players coming back tomorrow against Ottawa at home. You're coming off a long road trip, a very successful road trip. Can you handle being back on home ice and continue to win and continue to rack up points? You've gotten yourself back in a playoff spot at this point. Still some games in hand that other teams have around you at the moment that you're going to have to continue to win and take advantage of the opportunities at home for the next 5 games. Deadline is March the 8th, so we're getting down to crunch time for the NHL trading deadline, and it's certainly shaping up to be a pretty interesting one for the Nashville Predators and the options they have in front of them. That's going to do it for us today here on Robby and Rexrode. Joe will be back tomorrow morning, fresh off the NFL Combine, day 1 in Indianapolis. Chasing Big Joe coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.